hang on another, what do you reckon, Lynn? 120 seconds. Look at that, 120 seconds. And then we're gonna start with a packed webinar. There's going to be a PDF. You'll get the PDF of the slides. And not only that, at no expense spared, you're going to get some additional notes. Plus, there's like a template of how to plan. So never let it be said that Grow My SME doesn't pull out all the stops. So who have we got on the line here? All right, Pauline wants to join us. Should we let her in? You've let her in. That's okay. Well, we're lucky to have Lynn letting people in the room. She's like the door woman. And, another 60 seconds, Lynn. I reckon I'll start if that's all right. So we'll see where everybody's from in a second. Well, you could probably tell from my accent where I'm from. That's right, Hull. Yeah, you've guessed it. One of those Southern Hemisphere Hull accents that you hear so little about, Lynn. Yeah, I don't think it's going to catch on. If it's all right then, Lynn, we're bang on 1300 on the basis that the clocks went in the right direction. So I'm going to start then. Here we go. And let's just do a little bit of a screen share if I can. Let's just share the right screen. That would be not the best start to it all, would it? All right, let's just move this out the way. All right, well, all the technology. So in the first instance, this is from this particular session. It's delivered to you from, hang on, we've got a bit of chat already. Whoa, Catherine, hello. Hello from Catherine to everyone. All right. Well, we're going to go through the chat stuff there, Catherine, but it's good to, in fact, you was on the previous one. So there you go. This is going to be new stuff. New stuff. That's my whole accent cutting through. So this is delivered on behalf of Humber Business Growth Hub and the Northern Powerhouse. That's right. And I'm going to be talking to you about webcam meetings with clients and new prospects. So it's the new normal. How do we do this through the webcam? Delivered by Humber Business Growth Hub. Now, if you look at the bottom, they've got a great LinkedIn profile and a terrific Twitter account on Humber Growth. So there's lots of good stuff on there. So let's get a little bit into it, shall we? So what I think you've got in front of you, is a dashboard like that. That's right. You should have a dashboard like that. So let's just have a look at how that works. Now you see where that red arrow is? That's chat. So if you could put in the chat box hi, just like Catherine already did. So you just click on that and you put in hi or hello. We can stretch to hello. We've got the budget for hello. And send it to everybody. So I've got Cyber Power PC, hi all, Pauline, Chris Watson. Whoa, from Grimsby. It's Kevin from Grimsby. All right, man. Brian from Cleethorpes. And some salutations. We like a bit of salutations, John. Now here, you can either send it out to everyone or you can send it to just me or Lynn. So let's say, for example, I mean, this may not be the case, but you just wanted to let me know what a great session this is. So if you thought, you know what, I'm going to drop Bob a note. Well done, mate. That's the way to go. If you want to say to everyone, that's the way to go as well. So you've got two options there. Now, if I can trouble you to mute your mic, if I could trouble you to do that, we'll open the mics up later for sure we will. But for the moment, if you can mute it, because what sometimes happens, folk get a phone call, or I've even had one where a gentleman and his partner were talking, and I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have wanted the rest of us to have heard what they were saying. Yeah, but that happens. That's life, isn't it? Reactions. We've got two kind of reactions. You can put your hand up or applause. So use that as you see fit. So let's get into it. Well, first of all, this material is proven material from the Southern Hemisphere, and I'm going to explain to you why it comes from the Southern Hemisphere. So, if you think about communication in England, yeah, we have 432 people per square mile. So prior to the COVID, mostly folk were seeing folk face to face. Why wouldn't that be the case? We've got 432 people per square mile. If we go a bit further down, and if you're trying to place my accent, it's from South Africa. And South Africa has, hurrah, there are 48 of us per square mile. If we go a bit further down, where I've had the privilege of working as well, not so much. And that's why the Southern Hemisphere jumped onto webcam as a method of operation. So that's where the material comes from, not from Hull, I'm sorry to say. But this has been an ongoing thing, to be frank. It started, if you remember, 10 years ago with the volcanic disturbance that we had. And then we had costs being cut and uncertain economic climate. So this move to the virtual world of communicating our value, it's not so brand new. We've been evolving towards that, some more so than others, but generally this has been the direction it's been going. It's the direction it's been going. And the technology's picked up a bit as well. Skype, Zoom, Google, whatever it is that you use, even in this period, most of the products I've referred to have been enhanced considerably to facilitate people having meetings like this. We've got the impact of climate change, and there's a cracking piece of work there, although it's quite old, published in 2010, that nearly a third of meetings could be replaced with virtual meetings, and there's no reason to think this won't be the case. So when we think about the balance between meeting people and doing stuff like this, talking through the webcam, this has already been happening. This has already been happening. It's not new information. And bit by bit, transactions and relationships have been migrating through the webcam rather than through the handshake. And now we've got this moment, and I hope it doesn't last long, but I suspect it's going to last longer than most people think. And we end up with this tremendous imbalance now that almost we're having to communicate what we're trying to do through the camera. Now, yeah, we'll start off with here because this is the situation. There's a body of work by Albert Mehrabian. Now, there's a name for you. Professor Emeritus of Psychology, UCLA. That's a name for you. Now, he did a considerable amount of work. So if you use your browser and have a look at this guy, he's not putting out figures randomly. No, he's not, Lynn. What he came up with was a series of models that suggest that more than half of what we communicate comes through what people see. So although there's a huge fixation on content, getting the content right, your vocal inflection will impact what you're saying far more than the content of what you're actually delivering. And this is quite a big deal because now we lose so much power. So I'm going to put some things out there as we go through some of the solutions. And the first thing is, it's hard anyway to buy into someone's point of view. It really is hard. But unless we can buy into someone's point of view, it makes it very difficult to have meaningful communication. And the webcam does not lend itself to solving this problem. It certainly doesn't. So what you've got, if we look at the model, look at a period of time going from left to right. So the meeting starts, there's the introduction, you have the recap at the end. Now what's going on? Most of us are communicating between a mix of the new normal and the old normal. So most of us don't quite have our webcam strategy worked out. So when we are talking, whatever it is we're trying to do to differentiate what we're about, it's a mixture of the old normal and the new normal. So the person receiving this, the reception of it, it's disconcerting. I mean, you imagine if I decided with Lynn's permission to suddenly say, well, okay, in this session, The great news for all of you that aren't South Africans is I'm going to communicate to you in a mixture of English and Afrikaans. So if I said, praat 'n bietjie stadiger alsjeblieft, and it's really good to see you, Chris, praat 'n bietjie stadiger, meneer, it wouldn't make any sense because I'm communicating in a mixture of languages. Now, however, it's not as visible or recognizable as me doing something as left field as that, but it is, because if you're using your old way of getting the point across and all you've done is jumped online, it's confusing for the recipient. It makes it hard for people to buy into what it is you're trying to communicate. And so people have this kind of oscillation of what's going on, which is possibly, and I don't believe I'm the only one, why virtual meetings are so tiring. They're immensely tiring. Do you look into the camera? Do you look at the person you're talking to? Do you look at your partner on the call? Do you look at your slides? What are you looking at? And time seems to pass so much more quickly when you're on a call. And this is why. So let's have a look at what we can do about this. So the first thing is we have to improve our listening skills. Yep, that's the first takeout from this. The key to online communication is to really focus on listening skills. It's critical. You see, the challenge with listening skills is this, and I know I'm not the only person that's heard of Stephen Covey or Covey, if you're those of you from the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah, people mostly listen with that in mind. You now need to listen to understand somebody, because what you say and how you say it will now have a disproportionate impact, because the webcam really, it reveals weaknesses in the way you're communicating. I mean, just think recently of how many of our leading politicians have been interviewed. It doesn't really matter what side of the house, whether it's local representation or Westminster representation. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's observed how inconsistent it is the way people are communicating to the public. And mostly these are people that have been trained on how to communicate, but not through a webcam. I think I'll just chuck your friend and mine, the Dalai Lama, in here. Enhancing your listening skills, if you can really focus on listening, it will give you the platform in terms of what you need to communicate. So let's just have a little bit of a look at what's going on. So we're going to start off with something a little bit different, because that's just the way we are. I'd like you to get your phone and browser. If you could do that, that would be fantastic, because I just want to get your point of view on something just to see what you think. So let's just have a look at this. So what we have here is a slide. Now, if you're on your browser, on your phone, and we'll see how this goes. This could be really exciting, Lynn, or it might not be, but it could be. Let's try it. So we're going to go to menti.com. See if you can find that, menti.com, MENTI.com. And then, so if you've got that, I think Cyber Power's happening. I think Miss Cyber Powers, she's got menti.com cooking. And you click on join a presentation. And what it's going to ask you, Catherine, is for a code. Okay. So you put in the code, which is, in this instance, it's 82 40 14 and 8. And you submit it. And what happens, you'll get like a dashboard like this. Now, here's the thing. None of us have met before, or I've chatted to Lynn. So you've got 8 options here, and you can choose 4. So what I want you to do, okay, we're already in business. We have got an early competitor. Okay, let's just see what that looks like. Anybody else going to join the poll just to see? We've got 4 people so far, 5 people. I've just got a feeling, Lynn, that we're going to get a sixth. Oh, look at that. Technology. Now, just so that you know, I didn't come up with these questions. No, 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 John. I didn't come up with the questions. It came from a platform called Doodle. Doodle. I'm sure some of you will have heard of Doodle. And they did quite a big survey around the kind of the subject of the performance of virtual meetings. Now, I'm going to send out, Lynn, in the notes, because this is the third time I've shown this slide. And Lynn, it's crazy. The results are nearly always the same. And if you look at that, look how high people who don't listen to others racks up. We have never met before, Chris, and it's joint top. It's joint top. People who interrupt others is usually in the top 3 as well. Because the problem is, if you've got multiple people on the call, you've got audio bounce. So by accident, Catherine, people are interrupting other people, but they don't realize it. I thought it was kind of interesting as well. People who talk about nothing. That's normally in the top 3 as well. Yeah, there's a lot of that. We'll come on how to deal with that, but that's the first thing. The irritation of people rocking up late and early, it's rarely in the top 10. I mean, you think it was up there, but it's not, because most people realize that people do arrive late and have to go early. Okay, let's have a look at the slides, and we're going to come back. We're going to come back to, we've got another quiz, Lynn, and I know that you've promised some super prizes for whoever gets the right answer. Look, Lynn's confirming there. Okay, so let's have a look at what we're going to do about this. Right, I don't think this will be terrific new information, but what we've got going on is something like this. We've got the treatment capacity of the United Kingdom NHS, and we've got the number of cases. And what the government's trying to do is keep the caseload below the treatment line. So it kind of goes up and down for the surfers that are out there. It's a perfect wave. I guess I'm not the only surfer. And it's definitely having an effect on face-to-face procurement. So it says face-to-face landscape, the landscape of face-to-face meetings. So I just wonder if you could put in the chat box if this means anything to you, the fact that you can't meet people. I'd be really interested if that means anything to you. So you might put in the chat box, Catherine might put in, nope, doesn't affect me because I'm an online businessman. But Brian Pope from Cleethorpes might say, well, the way I do things, pretty much face-to-face. I'm a bit of a face-to-face guy. So can we have a couple of comments in the chat box, how we see that going? Because I'm going to share some information with you from the Chartered Institute of Procurement. Yes, Chartered Institute of Procurement. Yeah, Kevin finds it irritating. Kevin, it is irritating not to be able to see people face to face. John Dixon, yep. And Pauline, so for the technical product, it's going to be difficult to get the value case of a technical product through a camera. Yeah, and I think that I think it's a situation of missed opportunities, actually. And I know what you mean, Catherine. It doesn't feel real. I'm going to share with you some concepts that I think you won't have seen before that may help you. And you know something? Kevin has nailed it. It's very hard to build trust in relationships through the medium of a Logitech camera. It's just so hard. And I'm going to try and show you what you can do within the time that we've got. And Cyberpower's right. Nobody wants face-to-face training. Nobody does. And for those of you that are in the training arena or the coaching arena, actually being in the room with people has a big percentage of what you do, how you manage the room, how you get to people to interact with you, how you get them to interact with each other. And try as we might through this camera, all of that's missing. And Catherine's chucked it out there again. without trust and relationships, it's very difficult to start creating the platform of trust that you need to make business relationships move forward. So let's have a look at this situation. I'm going to show you some really secret stuff from the Southern Hemisphere, and I've got to ask you to promise not to show it to anybody, okay? It's really serious stuff. What it also means, if you're finding this, so's your competition. So the competition is having just as much fun with this as you. So if you can improve what you do by 10% at the end of this session, it will have made some impact. So let's look at it. Right, let's have a little look at this model, and I'm going to talk you through it, and we're going to use this model to talk about as we go through what to do. And for those of you, and Catherine, you were on the previous session, I showed this model before because it plays into Catherine, the things that people are concerned about. Because without a relationship and without rapport, what happens? People worry. People worry. People worry about making decisions without the trust there. So before, those of us in business development, and I know I'm not the only one, we were looking, Lynn, at sales cycles. We say, okay, the way we make things happen through the sales cycle. Well, now we have to reboot that and pivot it and think, okay, the way we're going to manage things is by recognizing what the other person will worry about because we are not in the room with them. Because people will worry about making a virtual decision, whether that decision is to continue using you, to use you in the first place, to expand the scope of what it is that you're doing. That's what they worry about. So if you look at it, it's got 6 features to it. Now, hey, I'm going to put my hands up. I would like to tell you that I came up with this, but I didn't. So there you go. I didn't come up with this at all. I was shown it by a pal in Hong Kong who sells software from Australia into the Chinese mainland. So he said, this is what you need to get your head around. This is what people worry about. There's 6 features to it, and you have to approach it slightly different. So through the webcam, when people are giving you their requirement, so for some of you on the call, you'll know that as the specification. You need to stick your head under the bonnet. What is the underlying need that has generated this requirement? Try and move away from just taking as read what someone's communicating to you. This is what I require you to do. Get underneath it. Can you share with me what's driving you to seek for that requirement? I'm sure there's people on the call that already do that as a matter of course, but if you're not, you need to take it a bit further because you no longer have the presence in the boardroom or face-to-face to create that rapport, to try and understand where they're coming from. So you've got to approach it in a much more granular and factual-based model. So that's the first thing. The selection. Now I'm going to give you a sample of this. I'm recording it, Lynn, so I'm going to be very careful of how I communicate this. Okay, selection. Now, you're thinking, okay, this is how they select when they make a decision, and you're probably going to take it as read that that is the selection criteria. Now, I'll share something with you, and I don't think it's going to harm anybody, but it's only like about 2 weeks old. I do a lot of online training, and what happened, my business partner, Katarzyna Lanucha, and I, yeah, thanks for that, Catherine. So okay, I'm getting a bit of feedback there from Catherine. We can live with that. So I'll tell you what happened. Katarzyna Lanucha and I do cross-cultural training sessions on business development, mainly on export. So it's the United Kingdom Department of International Trade, which I think most of us would agree is a pretty big gig. It is the UK Department of International Trade. So when I look at their selection process, and I'm being serious here, the likelihood of a two-person consultancy, Lynn, getting a contract, a direct contract with the UK Department of International Trade, I would say that's low. And I think anyone on the call that's involved in business development would say, well, Bob, to be honest, it's a bit of a long shot, mate. There's going to be, and I don't want to name any brands because it could be damaging. There's going to be some consulting firms with big brands. There's going to be a couple of universities that already have an incumbent supplier that they've used before. Now, all those things are true. So when you look at the selection process, you would think that a two-person outfit, and okay, I'm going to say this, Lynn, a two-person outfit based in Hull, sorry for the lads from the Humberside, it's unlikely that we're going to kind of jump out and say, use us. But we got the work, which is kind of more astonishing to me probably than you. How did we get it? Because I understood the decision criteria, because before we went through the process, I said, how did you come up with that selection process? How? And they explained how they came up with it. So I actually put forward two angles that influence their decision criteria. If you can influence someone's decision criteria, you've got a better chance of getting it over the line. And I'll let you into the secret. I shared with them that the Southern Hemisphere has been doing webcam stuff for the last 10 years. And I was able to provide references from Hong Kong, Australia, Beijing, and Durban. And obviously, you know what I'm going to say, no one else could. And that's how we got the work. Now, I don't think that Katarzyna and I are any better at delivering the work than they would have been, for the record, but we were able to differentiate ourselves, and that's what you need to do. So think about, what is the real decision criteria? How can I disturb their decision criteria that I'm the only show in town? Because unfortunately, we cannot generate the rapport that we did before. And some of you on this call, I know there's some very experienced business development people. I'm pretty certain that everyone on the call is going to say, well, you need trust, you need a relationship, you need something to get the thing going. And the way I deal with it is I meet people face to face. So let's have a look on how we do that. And let's just see what Catherine's written to me there. How did I get to know the decision criteria? Well, Catherine, what I did, I took the trouble, the liberty, some would say, the liberty of ringing up the DIT regional office and saying, do you mind if I ask some specific questions about the decision criteria? The reason being, it will affect our proposal and the selection process. Because webcam communication is so new, I'm speculating that the UK DIT have only just worked out how they're going to select the supplier. So that's how I did it, Catherine. It was just a disturbance email, and it must have rang a bell with someone down in London, and that's how I did it. I think we disturbed their criteria. The reflection part of it, right now, people are more risk averse than ever before. So what you need to do is start thinking about, how can we alleviate the risk? How can we do that? How can we make this as risk-free as possible? Now, you can do it in different ways. You can do it, and this is just a general comment because it may not fit every single offer that's here. It could be risk alleviation, could be a pilot. Risk alleviation could be references from a like-for-like business. Risk alleviation could be COVID terms, where you say, well, usually it's a 6-month contract, but because of COVID terms, we're doing a 3-month contract or a 6-month with a 3-month break. We're offering extraordinary terms and conditions because of the COVID decision making. Now, here's something really kind of crazy. Now, I wish I could tell you that I came up with that idea, but you know, Lynn, I didn't. I got it from someone else. I know, Brian. I hang out with the guys from the Chartered Institute of Procurement. If you bring into the conversation that, well, people that are working with me at the moment, we've got specific COVID terms and conditions for the COVID period, just that phrase alone, Brian, will make you sound different to anyone else they're talking to, because people generally aren't offering COVID terms and conditions unless they're in, fast food or whatever. So it gives you the opportunity to approach a service level agreement and the way that you work with people slightly differently. So I'll give you an example of risk alleviation. I'm taking references only taking references that go on work that I've done in the last 90 days. So I'm going in there saying, okay, all bets are off. Anyone can give you a reference for last year. The only references that are worth anything are from the last 90 days. So I've been really focusing on getting references in the last 12 weeks. Now, I'm not saying it means that any other reference is invalid or irrelevant, Chris. I'm just saying that I'm trying to alleviate the risk by getting information that shows them in this COVID period, I am a safe pair of hands. So we'll have a look at that. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide. Let's see what we've got here. And I'm keeping a watch on the timeline. That's the quickest 30 minutes in my life. So let's have a look. How does this affect you? Well, I touched on this before we get into the next slides. Always bear in mind that whatever you're communicating through a camera is exposed to this. Yeah. The concept, it's known as, oh, it's terrible. It's called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. The Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. In this current crisis, if you don't mind me calling that, people's attention spans through a webcam is compressed. Their attention span is so small. I mean, I don't know how many. Here's the thing. Perhaps put it in the box here. And I'll tell you my figure. Did you know, Lynn, this is the 4th webcam call I've been on today. It's the 4th one. The first one was in Poland this morning at 8 o'clock their time, which was 7 o'clock ours. So I've already been on 4 webcam-based meetings. So can we see in the box, is this the first one for everyone, or is this the second for some people? Could you put in the chat box? So if I put in there 4 meetings, second one, Lynn's on a 4th as well. Second for Kevin, first one for Brian. Okay. Second for Kathy Chin. Okay, I guess a couple of people are not near their keyboard, but I think we're getting, wow. Yeah. These kind of meetings, you kind of got like a drawback with the webcam meeting, because information deterioration is a common feature of being in business development. And when you're trying to differentiate what you are to someone else, the best method of doing it is actually in the room. It really is. It's the best medium for doing something. And when you're in a room, you can physically give out hard copy. You can, when you're showing somebody something, you can really interact with them and make eye contact and all that good stuff that we do. But through a camera, it doesn't work. So I'd suggest you really need to think about the arguments for doing business with you. You need to compress those. You really need to compress those, John. They really need to be far more succinct, far more direct, and far more easy to engage with. I'll come back to this one if that's all right. We've got another quiz. I'm going to come back to it because I just want to get onto this. Hang on. Okay, so these are the 4 variants that we're going to talk through today. So this is really hot stuff. So the first one is the, yeah, you don't get a free coffee and chocolate biscuit. I'm with you, Kevin. I'm with you, man. You certainly don't. I'm lucky just to have a glass of water. These are the 4 things we're going to discuss. Developing a new relationship, developing one that's existing, which can be an existing client or an existing prospect, managing a relationship that's deteriorated. So I put dissatisfaction, but it's kind of like recovering a relationship. And the final one is a meeting around, well, this is what we're doing at the moment. So I'm hoping that those meetings make some sense. So just to give me a feel of what's going on in people's mind, just put one number in the box that you think is the most important one for you. Like if I was to say it for myself, the most important thing for me is developing existing relationships. That's the most important thing through webcams for me. It's number 2. 1 and 2. 4 for Kevin. Crikey, Kevin, that's a sticky one, managing scope meetings through a webcam. Oh boy, we're going to talk about that. 1 and 2. Yeah, 2 and a 4. Okay, well, I've got stuff on scope. Scope is one of the harder ones to do, actually. And John's looking at number 2 as well. Yes, scope. Yeah, we'll have a look at that. And the reason I'm wincing is for good reason, but I'll show you what to do. So let's have a look at developing a new relationship. Well, a new relationship is essentially almost like a sales, you know, like it's in the vernacular of sales. And those of you on the call last time, if you remember, Catherine, I know you were on the call, I was talking about these sales models. Now, these are in the PDF. Now, these 12 sales models, some of them are books, some of them are blogs, some of them are courses and programs. But according to the UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, these are the 12 most popular sales models used in the United States. Now, I know that I'm in Humberside, Lynn, so, you know, you might be sharing why that may be this, what goes on in California, but not in Hull, but these are the main ones. And what's interesting, if you go through them, and it's worth going through them because if you get the chance, I'm sure you'll uncover some ideas, Suzette. There's 3 of those would work through a webcam, only 3. So what you've got, if there's anyone on the call that invested £1,600 per person on the Sandler selling system, which is all about building rapport, the bad news is you've just done 1,600 quid. Saying that because we don't want to be sued, do we, Lynn? I think there's a likelihood that Sandler are already working out what to do differently with that selling system. But if you imagine that all that stuff we spoke about at the start, building up trust, creating relationships, building rapport, all of these sales models are around that. And those are all the assets that we don't have. So we need to look at it in a slightly different manner. And it's something to do with Adam Sandler, either the Sandler selling system. Yeah, I got that in a text box a week ago, thinking, no, it's not Adam Sandler. So let me show you why this is important and how we do it. So when you develop a new relationship, these are the factors to consider. All right, okay, you're going to like this. You're going to like this. So first of all, is it that part of the sales cycle when you're actually creating a prospect? Or is it that part of the cycle when you're doing the first meeting? Is it that part of the cycle when they've become a new client? Is it that part of the cycle when you're discussing revenue? Or it could be the length of the cycle. Those tend to be the 5 variables in business development. So if I use it on myself, I don't think there's anyone else on the call in who actually sells business development software. So on that basis, I don't think this is going to be that exciting. But the concept is for business development software, you have a number of prospects. So that's one touch point. How do you talk to a prospect? Number 2, second touch point. How do you talk to them when they've agreed to have a meeting? 3, how do you talk to them when they've decided to become a customer? The 4th thing is when you talk about money, how does that go? And then you've got the amount of time it takes. So if you take it that we're selling business development software to large legal practices, so legal practices turning over more than 25 million, that cycle is quite long, Suzette. You're not going to get one of those over the line in like, two meetings. Now, here's where you need to work it out. What's going to make the most difference? And I'll show you what I mean. Because that process equals your revenue. So you need to, first of all, isolate where does your webcam performance make the most difference. So it could be prospecting. Now, in our business, the amount of prospects we can talk to has gone down by 30%. That may not be for you. It may be more, it may be less. The number of first meetings that we're getting from those prospects, that's gone down. The number of people that agree to become a client has gone down out of that. And the amount of money that we're getting per client has gone down. And it's taken me 20% longer than it did before to create the same cash flow. So when you get this, I would suggest that you look at those 5 and work out, what can I do on that process that would make the most difference? Now, in our model, it's actually prospecting makes the most, it has the biggest impact at the front. Now, on our model, this is what it's done to our cash flow. Get ready. Yeah, that's a serious damage. It's hard to wonder why I look so cheerful each day, but I pull it off somehow. So you need to look at your process and think, where is the touch point? What is the argument I need to master to make the difference? Is it I need to master getting people to be more interested in what I'm doing? Is it that? Is it I need to master a more successful first meeting? You might pick on everything, but I'm inclined to say pick out the part that makes the most difference, and we'll investigate what that might do. So what you've got available to you is this. Because with rapport and relationship, we've lost this. So if you think about it, I'm sure, you know, we've got people on the call here. Usually when you go and visit someone, you can pretty much start chatting straight away, but on the webcam, you can't. And I'll give you an example of this. I've got a pal who, he also sells legal technology. It's very good, actually, and it doesn't compete with us. But he's just great to be able to start chatting as soon as he's walked into the premises. He's pretty good at small talk, making what I would consider to be quite witty remarks. He's got a bit of a David Niven approach to stuff. Really cool. You got none of that on a webcam call, are you? Because the screens just open up. When you enter the building, you get the chance to chat sometimes when you're walking up the stairs or walk into the lift or after you've signed in at the reception desk. So you walk into the meeting from the reception desk, that's not there. Even having a coffee break during the meeting, that's not there. While you're waiting for the meeting to start. So we lose all those things. So let's work out, which I'm going to share you what you can do. Because those things that we've lost are quite big things, actually. So the first thing to do through a webcam is to get the other side talking as quickly as you can. So that's the first thing. Work out on a webcam call, how can I get the other side to speak as much as they possibly can? Now, I'm going to show you some different questions, but it's far more important on a webcam call to get the other side to speak. You will differentiate yourself far more by asking good questions that get the other side to talk than plowing straight into the benefit case of why they should work with you. Now, that's kind of back to front with a lot of what goes on, because a lot of those sales models assume that you've already got the rapport and the relationship. So you go straight into, these are the features of what I offer. This is the pricing structure. The benefit to you is this, which means to you that. On a webcam call, if you're going to master any skill, is to get the other side speaking. So there's some kind of box standard things you could say. So I could be saying to John, it's the first time we've met. How are you managing? Okay, this is a little bit more sophisticated. So John, great to see you. How are you managing? And more importantly, how are your clients managing? How are your clients managing is a really cool thing to ask, because it's the clients of our clients that decide whether our clients hire anybody. If you think it through, it's the clients of our clients that dictate the cash flow that they've got. If you can solve a problem that they have with their clients, you're more likely to get the gig. So go straight in. How are your clients managing? Ask them. I often open with, all right, so John, I know that you're busy. What's happening in your sector? And how are your clients managing? You really need to get them speaking far more early than going, John, it's my pleasure to meet. I'm Bob Spence from Bob Spence and Bob Spence, and I'm going to talk to you about Bob Spence and some Bob Spence, and Bob Spence is doing some Bob Spence stuff with. If you're going to differentiate yourself, you're going to differentiate yeah, if I could say it, differentiate yourself in a webcam call by what they say to you, not what you say to them. That is the biggest experience that's from the Southern Hemisphere. The sales role is a volte-face. You've got to get them to talk. Another straightforward one. So Brian, you could be saying, so I'm speaking to a lot of people, what's been the response in your sector to the pandemic? When people start to talk to you around this, it gives you the hooks that you can use to develop your arguments to solve those 5 points. Now, that depends what it is you're doing. And it is all about the buyers. I would be looking, rather than generate a better sales presentation, I would be looking to generate a better portfolio of opening questions. Opening questions. You really need powerful opening questions. You need questions that they will want to answer, that they can answer, that are relevant to them. And right now, I wouldn't call it like the Dunkirk spirit, but people tend to want to talk about what's going on. There's a whole body of evidence that you can certainly open up a conversation by talking around how's this affected you, how's it affected your clients, have you noticed what's been altering in your sector. Now, if you research before you're on the call, you can throw things in. So I could be saying to John, well, John, one of the things I've noticed in the legal sector, most practices aren't getting walk-ins off the street. How's that affected your practice? What's been happening? The reason I'm asking, I always like to understand what's going on. You've really kind of got to spend much, much, much more time on getting their point of view rather than getting your point of view. Try and search for what's called a shared experience. Now this is a bit more difficult through a camera. I think this is one of the things where LinkedIn actually can help, because most people on their profile, there's usually 2 or 3 clues around what they're most likely going to be able to talk around. I mean, what I'm saying, you know, search for a shared experience. I don't mean, you know, oh, did you watch Strictly Dancing on Saturday or something? That's not going to help. By the way, I think it was on Saturday. You've got to look for what could you talk about from your profile that matches their profile. So for example, I worked in the banking sector. So quite often I bring up banking where it's appropriate with the person I'm dealing with. Look for it in LinkedIn. What organizations do they belong to? What's their educational background? What's their job description? What's their job title? So the questions that you're sharing actually match into something that they can talk about. Very important. When you share, looking for a shared experience, start to look for information about the challenges that sector is facing, and then do a little bit of storytelling selling where you put yourself into that problem. So it could be something like, a lot of people at the moment are struggling to make decisions around training. I fully understand that. Let me share with you some of the experience in the sector. And I've got 2 or 3 articles that I would share if it's a training gig. And then I would go into, in my experience, what people are finding at the moment is they're needing to work with people that can X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. Here's some evidence around that. You need to put yourself into the story, into their problem. Always define the problem using their vocabulary. So when I'm speaking to a legal sector, I go all legal. The challenge of managing a multi-site practice when some are partners and some are fee earners. You've got to know the vernacular of the audience that you're talking to. That's one of the weapons of creating relationships now. So for example, let's say you're talking to a procurement officer for an accounting business. Start to be able to speak fluent accountancy. I don't mean portray that you're an accountant. I don't mean that. What I mean is you must use the language of the listener, not the language of your offer or your language of the product. You really have to pull back from the marketing messages that may exist on your website and start to think about, how can I have a conversation through a camera with this person that makes sense to them in their language. You can also pull out from their website things like mission statements and things that they're looking to achieve, or something from their news feed, but you've really got to work extra hard to find that common ground. Now, it's doable. It's absolutely doable. When I send you the crib sheet, I'm going to give you the the winning moves crib sheet of, this is how you do some research before a conversation. And seriously, it's not that difficult, but it will differentiate you from anyone else that's not done that research. And most people aren't doing that research. They truly aren't. And it's not that difficult, is it? Always define the problem from their point of view. So if there is a particular problem that the sector normally has, frame it from their point of view. So it could be, what challenges are you currently facing from your clients? Let's have a look here. Is there a pandemic? I think there's a pandemic, Kevin. Maybe it's not hit Cleethorpes or Grimsby, but I think for most of us, there is a pandemic. Yeah, so start to define the problem from the way that they see things. At the moment, one of the best ways of defining a problem, if there's any possible way of linking what you offer to the following problems. Now, I don't know what everyone does on this call, but I'm just going to share with you some ideas here. Okay, the first idea is cash flow. Is there any way that you can link what you do to cash flow? Because cash flow is something that's going to attract everyone's attention. Is there anything that you can do in your offer that improves time consumption, time management? Is there anything that you do in your offer that would help somebody who's planning for 2021? Is there anything in your offer that would link into that? See, what I'm doing here, it's framing what I do around the things that people are considering right now. So you need to, when you look at the crib sheet, start picking out, how can I put arguments regarding what I do around the 5 things that are on people's minds right now. So re-engineer what it is you're doing, and then so define it from the buyer's perspective, then define what you represent from what it might mean to their shareholders, which is not necessarily the same thing. So let's have a look at this. And this is why you should be doing this with an existing relationship. Okay, I'm sure I'm not the only person on the call that's got existing clients. Okay, I call that retained revenue. You might call it previous revenue. So how does this work out? I'm going to show you some arithmetic why you have to manage your existing clients through the webcam. Lapse rate. We define that as the amount of business that we have on the books that at some point will fall off the books. So not every single license that we sell will stay on the books for 10 years, and that's just a feature of software. So we have an average length of contract, which gives us the money that pays for the bills. So you need to think about, in terms of your communication strategy, you've got 2 things to work on. One is the retention of the clients that you have. Then you've got the length of time that you're signing them up, or the length of the deal. So as a software, we have a specific framework, but trainers will have a specific framework you're trying to work to. I'm sure everyone on the call has something, there's some kind of framework. So how does this look? So let's say our previous revenue was £1 million. So that's £1 million of webcam. A lapse rate before the pandemic, that hasn't happened, was 50%. We would find that 50% of people would lapse because once the software had done its job, they didn't need to keep it. Average length of the contract was 24 months. And that meant, yeah, £1 million of revenue, it goes down to 750,000. 25% loss. So we built into our plan before the pandemic, £25, 25%. Now, if we look at it now, it looks something like this. Whoa. Yeah, because people are constantly looking, where can we save some money? And non-operating software is a good place to save it. I don't agree with it, by the way, but that's how it is. I'm not able to sell a 2-year contract. It's now a 1.5 year. So, yeah. What I'm suggesting to you is, in terms of your contact strategy, look at the pressure points on your revenue, and that will influence what your contact strategy should be. For us at the moment, the biggest issue is a contact strategy that works on the lapse rate rather than the average amount of time people hire us. Now, again, these formulas, I'll send them out, Lynn, but you have to look at what part of my revenue do I really need to be really cool in terms of use of the webcam. So this one here is how to manage a meeting through a webcam. Now some of this, I'll go through this. This may not be true for you, but now we've kind of gone virtual. People are complaining more. That may not be you, and it may not be your clients, but it's a lot easier to complain virtually than it is to complain to somebody face to face or over the telephone. So what's happening, as people are becoming stressed, there is a whole load of evidence around people are complaining more. So if you're the person, if you're the sole trader or responsible for dissatisfaction, the first thing is to put any emotion aside, because it's just a feature of the COVID environment that we're in that people are complaining more. So through a webcam, you have to avoid challenging dissatisfaction, even if it's accurate. Now, I'll give you an example of this. I'm sure that you will have seen the politicians arguing about Manchester, Westminster, Westminster, Manchester. I'm guessing that everybody's seen that. When I've seen people challenging each other's opinion through a camera, I think the guys were using Cisco WebEx, it really doesn't sound very good, because they're not really trained to communicate dissatisfaction, is one. Secondly, the person dealing with it's not trained to dealing with it, and they mostly sounded evasive, in my opinion, as someone that doesn't vote, has no intention of voting either. So try not to challenge dissatisfaction, and make an opportunity to say, I'm really glad you've shared that with me. In these current circumstances, it's really important for me to get first-hand feedback as to how you feel about how this is going, and I'm really pleased that you've taken the trouble to have this call with me. I really do appreciate it. Now, I think you should say that whether you appreciate it or not, because what you've got to do is take the temperature down, because through a webcam, temperatures go up really, really quickly, which is, again, if you see the House of Commons performing, people are getting really, really irritated really quickly. Always play back what they've said. So I'd be playing back, Lynn, my understanding is that the reporting feature didn't work last week. That's what I understand. I also understand you had a really important meeting, and because our technology didn't work, you were unable to go to the meeting. Is that right? Have I understood it? Have I understood it? Have I also got your point of view? You must make extra care and attention to get a very accurate story of any complaint or dissatisfaction or irritation, and play it back. It's far more important than ever before. Now, the method, how you deal with it after that, it really does depend on how your customer service works, but you really do need to make sure people can hear very clearly that you've heard them clearly. So you need, that's the big thing for the webcam. Communicate exactly that I've heard you really well. That's the thing to do. Okay, a scope meeting. Let's have a little cruise through that. Yeah, one of the challenges with scope meetings, and it may not be the challenge for everyone on here before we do another quiz, is this. Too many people get invited into scope meetings, and the people that are on the meeting, some of them actually shouldn't be on it. And if they are on it, they've got nothing to really contribute. It also, the way a scope meeting doesn't work that well through a camera, if you've got 3 or 4 people on the call, it's very difficult to work out who is the lead on this call. Very difficult to work it out. So what to do is the following. Any scope meeting, more than you would do normally, communicate what is the purpose of this meeting. What is the purpose? So I've got a scope meeting later on this afternoon with another training provider, and I'm absolutely clear what the purpose of the call is. Absolutely clear. In fact, Lynn, the last time I spoke to Mark and we had a meeting, it was absolutely clear what we were talking about. There was no confusion how long the meeting would last, what we were going to cover, who was talking about what Mark was interested in, what he wasn't interested in, what he wanted from me. And it's just a pleasure when you're talking to someone. It's just concise, concise, concise. So it's the same thing. You need to make sure any scope meeting you're involved in on a webcam, it's very concise, the purpose. And the reason for that is you can't read the room. You can't read the room. Do your utmost to compress the number of people that are on a scope meeting. So if there's more than 4, try and get it down to 4 if you can. I'm going to show you some models where we need to get the numbers down. But sometimes you get people come in on it because they feel that they need to hear what's going on. Plan the call. What I tend to do with my scope meetings is break them into 4 units of 10 minutes if it's a 45-minute call. And so I'm managing 4 lots of 10 minutes rather than 1 lot of 40 minutes. And it's easier to manage 4 lots of 10 minutes than 1 lot of 40, because then after each 10 minutes, you can say, is that where we are, Brian? Has that been covered to your satisfaction, Chris? Does that make sense? Is there anything else you'd like to contribute, Jonathan? Kevin, what's your view on this? If you run it into a schedule, so you'd publish, and I'm going to send out the template, 4 units of 10, and at the end of each 10 minutes, I would hope we can sign off X, Y, Z. I would hope at this point this is to try and put a stake in the ground, because again, through a webcam, these meetings get much more granular. But when you see the templates, which are courtesy of Winning Moves, it'll make a lot of sense. And that's the information prior to the meeting. If you don't set out before the meeting the scope of the scope, the agenda, how it's broken into 4 units of 10 minutes, what you expect to cover in each unit of 10 minutes, and exactly how that schedule works, then don't be surprised if you get drift, you get people on the call that shouldn't be there. And I'm guessing that most people are responsible for that acronym. In fact, that's not badly, and I've gone a whole hour without an acronym. I feel like I've let everybody down. I mean, most people, come on, it's one acronym every 15 minutes, but not on this one. So, yeah, I think you'll find the minute you start saying to people, well, we're going to start working to a responsibility assignment matrix, you will find that less people will want to be on the call. In fact, the only people that will be on the call is the people that know they've got to do stuff. So that's your secret weapon. If you put in the agenda, and what I'll be doing at the end of the call is assigning responsibility, you'll be surprised how many people are too busy to be on your call, or not surprised. So let's have a look. Now here's the trick in a scope meeting, is to keep everyone's attention. Because one of the challenges is not every piece of the meeting involves everybody. So you have to make sure that your management of it is to make it as relevant as you can to everyone on the call. And for those of you, and I think Catherine, you were on the call last time, you've got the magic trick. And here's the magic trick, Brian. It's this. It's every 2 or 3 minutes, bring up someone's name. So if this was a scope meeting, I'd be saying, so Suzette, at this point, I'd like your input on that. Or Chris, it would be great to get a feel from you how you think this is going. Jonathan, I'm so grateful you're on the call. Can you just touch on in the chat box what you think about that? And Kevin, can you just touch on, you don't do it too much, but you need to every 2 or 3 minutes. It's called shout out. Shout out. That's what the technique's called, a shout out. So if you're on a call, so it's like on here. You don't need to see my notes. I've got your names. Now, I don't want to overdo it because I've got 30 minutes to get through the rest of this, but it's called a shout out. And Suzette, it works. I promise you it works. If you don't have shout outs, it's very hard to it's harder to get the people engaged with it. Shout outs. I reckon to keep a scope meeting on track, the shout out process is as important as the actual framework of the discussion. Because believe it or not, if people on the call know that you're going to refer to them and expect them to contribute, people either tune in or tune out and get off the call. Okay, let's have a look. What have we got? Yeah. Okay, let's go back to this. 1 second. All right, I'm going to do a bit of quiz malarkey here, Lynn. Let's see if I can do it. Let's see if I can do it. I know there's people on the call that are thinking, oh, he's going to mess this up. He's going to mess this up. He's surely not going to get 2 quizzes on the money in a row. Well, maybe I will. Okay, let's just see what everybody thinks about this. Yes, there are essentially 3 things that you can talk about through a webcam when you're doing business development or client relationships. And these are the 3 things. You can either talk about the quality of what you offer, the cost of what you offer, or the time that it takes. And as those of you that are managing consultants on the call, you can only deliver 2 out of the 3. So right now, what do you think the marketplace values right now? Now, I'm going to cheat, not because I am a cheat, because I know the answer from the Chartered Institute of Procurement. So I know what the answer is, and I'm not going to tell you until I've seen your answer. So it's not quite strictly come dancing, but, you know, it's, don't say it's not exciting. So what have we got? Oh, typical. My own phone's playing up. Honestly, Lynn, you'd think I'd have better technology, wouldn't you? But no budget. What have I got? 60, 25, 26, 7. Okay, so what you've got is, do you think people value time? You either strongly disagree or strongly agree. Are people mostly concerned about costs? Strongly disagree. Okay. And finally, are people that bothered about the quality right now? Obviously, it depends on what you're doing. As Dr. Watson would say. Well, I'll share with you what the Chartered Institute of Procurement. Yeah, time. Yeah, Chris, that's it, man. Time. That's right. Apparently, now bearing in mind that the Chartered Institute of Procurement, it only represents about 60,000 people. Now, 60,000 people sounds like a lot, but it actually isn't, because there's, I think, 3.4 million businesses, I think, or is it 4.2? Well, it's more than, there's a few million businesses. So they're obviously not everyone in business signs up for the Chartered Institute of Procurement, their program on how to buy. And probably half of the people on those programs work for accountancy firms or for councils. So, but time, the feedback was that time was critical. And I think there that Pauline's just dropped something in there. Yeah, you're right. Procurement, time was coming out. I don't know if it's always time critical, Pauline. It might be, but they did a survey around procurement over the last 90 days, and that information is about a month old. So it wouldn't even surprise me, Pauline, if it's starting to change, to be honest. But everything was about time. Everything was about time. More so than the quality. And actually, out of the 3, cost was 3 out of 3. Because the people that have got money to spend, they can spend it. And a lot of people in some of the bigger companies, they're either going to spend it or lose it. So yeah, it's a lot more around time. Okay, well, let's just leave Mentimeter for a moment, and I think it's fair to say I did that in a flawless manner. Flawless manner. Okay. Right, let's just go back, if you don't mind me going back on my slides. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to share with you some more concepts around building rapport through the webcam. It really plugs in mostly to a new relationship, but it could plug into an existing one. One of the challenges with altering the way you deal with people is the webcam. It's not a good medium to change a relationship. What I mean by that, if your relationship with someone is kind of formal, then it's not good to use the webcam to go informal. And likewise, if your relationship with someone is informal, then it's not a great place to switch to formal. It just doesn't feel right. So what I'm going to share with you are some rapport building tactics of what you can do. The first thing is to communicate that because we're going through a different period, and I think that everybody can get their mind around that we're going through a different period, is to take a slightly different communication strategy. Now, I touched on this, and Catherine Chen will know I touched on this on the last call. And the first thing to do is to make a lot more use of voice, a lot more use of phone calls. Now, we've kind of moved on to like email and WhatsApp and texting, but the use of the voice is the most powerful thing right now. So I would be looking at the key relationships that you have and making a call, a phone call. So it could be, I'm ringing Pauline. Hi there, Pauline. It's Bob Spence from Bob Spence at Bob Spence doing some Bob Spence stuff. The reason I'm calling is probably like you, most of my communication now has moved online. And what I'd like to do is book a Zoom meeting with you in about 3 weeks' time to catch up. So what I'm suggesting is that you telephone somebody first to mark their card that in 2 or 3 weeks you're going to have a call. Now, the reason I'm saying 2 or 3 weeks is that most people can agree to a 45 or a 30-minute Zoom call 3 weeks from now, but not so many people can agree to that next week or the week after. So I've found, and the information's out there, that booking in a virtual meeting about 3 weeks in advance, most people will say yes to that. If you contact somebody for a Zoom meeting and you do the whole thing through email, the likelihood of getting a response is actually lower unless they've got a reason to talk to you. So I think that's something to consider. The next thing is that when you do have the call, when you're developing the relationship, is to start thinking about, well, what are we going to talk about? So you've got all these questions here. So what I'm going to do, Lynn, I'm just going to skip forward. Now we've recapped that slide. Let me go forward into, yeah, this slide here. Okay. I'm guessing everybody can see that. What we have here are the 5 different webcam formulas. And each one performs differently. So the way that we're going to get rapport is going to perform differently. So if I just go through the models, and I'm sure this you'll get this straight off. And it's to think about that when you are on a webcam, don't think it's the same for everybody. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll show you what I mean. So in this current pandemic, if I work twice as hard as you, and I've got twice as many customers, and I'm twice as skillful on the webcam, and I talk to my customers twice as much, and I'm asking for referrals and you don't, that will have a difference. So let's just play this back in another environment. Everything right now has a variable value, because when we look at the webcam, I want to talk to you about variable value. Okay, so even something as Coca-Cola, that's absolutely a commodity. I think everyone agree that's a commodity. Coca-Cola, it's a commodity. It should be the same price wherever it is. Now, these different prices, I got these different prices in the Intercontinental Hotel in downtown Warsaw. So in the first instance, there was a price if you wanted it brought to your room after midnight. There was a price because there's a vending machine. There's another price within the private bar, and that's probably the most expensive Coca-Cola in Central Europe. There's pricing with the restaurant. You can buy these little cans in the concession shop, and you can get a mixer as well. So even the value of Coca-Cola, it's 6 different value points in the same building. So when we're talking about our value through a webcam, there's more than one value to it. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let's have a look at the one-to-one. Now, I think most of us have got a grip of the one-to-one. So I'm just talking to Lynn. Lynn's talking back to me. How does that play out? Well, when we're doing things like this, it's appropriate to use the chat box, and I can send things across to Lynn in the chat box. So I could say, Lynn, I think it's going to be interesting. Let me just show you a piece of work that I did 2 weeks ago for Deloitte. Lynn, let me just show you something that I did last week. It's just a scope on a training proposal. Just have a look at this. Lynn, here's a clip of something. You can do that on a one-to-one. You can also make an amount of small talk, and you can also be less time conscious. Now, what I'm trying to do when I'm doing a one-to-one is to work out what is the communication strategy that Lynn finds the most valuable. So while we're doing this, I would be asking questions like, I normally follow up by email, then with another Zoom meeting, just to double check that we've both got the same understanding. So one of the things I'd recommend you do is constantly line up the next Zoom meeting on whatever you're doing. Okay, this is the change, a 1-to-2. I'm on a call to Lynn and Mark. So it's not the same. So it's me talking, or Sadia. I'm on a call to Lynn and Sadia. Okay, what's the difference? Okay, I will phone in advance, and let's say it's Lynn that takes the call, and I would say, I'm looking forward to that call, just so I understand which of the two of you will be the lead on the call. Which of the two of you will be the lead on the call? The reason I ask that is when the call starts, who should I be directing questions to? Who should I be directing questions to? Okay. Second question, there's 2 of you on the call. Are there different parts of the agenda where I should be addressing you and not Sadia? Just so I can prepare in advance. Okay, now I'm at the role play now. Hardly anyone does this, but can you imagine the difference it's going to make in rapport? The difference it will make to the performance of the call? Because what I'm able to do now is do shout outs to Sadia and Lynn on specific things that they're responsible for. So Sadia's project management, Lynn's operations. So we're talking, so just so I understand, what type of slides do you need from me? Lynn, when do you need me to test the technology? Sadia, when do you need this? Lynn, when do you need that? What is it you need from me? So that's a 1-to-2. A 2-to-1 works the other way around. So Lynn, I call Lynn. Lynn, you're going to be on the call with myself and Mark. Just before the call, to let you know in advance, Mark's the managing director and I report to Mark. My interest is going to be in the syllabus. Mark's interest is going to be around the service level agreement around the syllabus. My interest is going to be delivery. Mark's interest is going to be legacy. My interest is going to be the types of presentation you need. Mark's going to be more interested in the learning outputs. So when we're on the call, that's how it'll look. What I'll do, Lynn, I'll forward that to you. So when we're on the call, you know who you're talking to and what you're talking to them about. Now, again, if you're looking to improve relationships or rapport with somebody, that would improve my rapport with Lynn. I've already had this first conversation, but Lynn knows that when she comes on a call with me and Mark, we've pre-prepared how the call is going to perform. If we want to differentiate ourselves as a training provider against anyone else, that will help us to do that. Okay, 2 on 2. So at this time, it's me and Mark on a call, and we're going to be on a call with Lynn and Sadia. So I ring up Lynn. Lynn, myself and Mark are going to be on the call. Let me share with you our roles in Winning Moves. Mark is the managing director. I report to Mark. Mark will be our lead on the call. The type of questions that I can answer are this, this, and this, but Mark will play me in where that's appropriate. In terms of your role in this, which out of you and Sadia, who will be the lead from your side? Oh, I understand it's going to be you on this call. To help me prepare Mark, whose responsibilities are what on the call, so that we're not trying to work out who to address when we're on the call. Okay, now it gets kind of a bit more rock and roll. As soon as you're in +4, you need to induct the other side, Lynn. So how it works is this. I'm on one side of the call with 2 people. Lynn's on the other side of the call with 2 people. So I ring Lynn up a couple of days before the call, and I say, Lynn, I understand we've got 6 people on the call. I'd like to share with you how Winning Moves normally work through the webcam. On the call, I will be the lead. So I will be the one on our side that will be the person that brings in my colleagues. My colleagues are Sadia, and my colleagues are our managing director, Mark. But on this call, I will be the lead. I will be managing the technology. I will be looking at the chat box, and I'll be the one bringing Mark in and bringing Sadia in if it's what I need to answer, but I will be the one bringing them in. They won't just jump in. What I would ask, if it's possible, can you give me the breakdown with who's the lead on your side? Oh, right. Okay. So you're not actually the lead. You think it will be Terry. Okay. Okay. Will you be bringing people in, or will Terry? The reason I bring this up, it's been my experience. If we don't have someone on each side bringing someone in, it tends to be a free-for-all, and neither of us want that, do we? If we run to those models, and as I did last time, Lynn, I'll provide notes on this. I cannot stress how critical it is to do this on a call. Those models came from my pal in Hong Kong. I've been using those models way before the pandemic came. Nobody, Lynn, has ever complained when I've rang up and said, can we prep for this call? Nobody. Seriously, Jonathan, why would anyone knock back and say, oh my God, you want to prepare for a call? Man, that's not how we roll. We just rather turn up on the camera, Suzette, and see who's on. Anyone can talk. Pauline can talk. John can talk. Kev can talk. Anyone can talk when we're on a call. It doesn't matter. We just talk over each other, through each other. No one knows who's talking next. Hey, it's just great. No one will knock you back if you make that move. And once you've done that, you are creating rapport. Seriously, that's your route into rapport, by making those pre-call moves. So let's just say I'm talking to Lynn about this. Then we get the rapport because I say, okay, we're all geared up. And like this morning when we were testing, you know, it's quite right. We've spoken a couple of times now. What did you do at the weekend? I went surfing, and we were talking about Scarborough and hypothermia, because you kind of find that common ground. You will not find the common ground on a webcam call that looks like that. You've got to go outside the aisle. You will not create rapport if you've got 6 people. It's not available to you. That great joke that you normally crack in the boardroom when you go in, it just won't work because people don't know whether to laugh. I was on a call 3 weeks ago. I'm not going to tell you the joke. I'm saving it for myself because it's so brilliant. And I was on a call, man, and this guy cracked this brilliant joke. There were 7 on the call and no one laughed. So I thought, well, if no one else is laughing, I'm going to just stare into the camera as well, because that seems like the safest thing to do. It just went down like a lead balloon. Here's the crazy thing, Pauline. Here's the crazy thing. I rang Yvonne afterwards and said to her, you know, I thought that joke was really funny. She said, so did I. I said, well, how come you didn't laugh? And she said, well, how come you didn't? I said, well, Do we laugh when we're on a call? Is that right? Your boss didn't think it was funny. Well, you're wrong. She thought it was great. You can't do it. You have to do it before the call. The pre-call moves that you make will decide the relationship you have. So we've got this now. You're going to develop a new normal communication strategy based on these slides. You know there's the oscillation. We know all of that. And I'm absolutely aware of the time, Lynn. I've got a timer in front of me. I'm aware. You thought I wasn't aware, weren't you? You're thinking, he doesn't know. He's going to overrun. No chance. No chance. Okay. I think that we should have a little Q&A before we do a quiz. And what if it's all right, Lynn? I would suggest that we take the microphones off. I think we should not be timid. We should not be timid. So I'm going to stop the share. I'm quite happy to take any question about what I've covered. I'm being seriously in real time. I will try and answer it. The one thing I cannot talk about is the performance of Hull City. So if you can, the guys from Grimsby, if you can take that off the agenda, I know you're desperate to throw that one. So, Lynn, who wants to throw a question at me?
Hi, Will. It's Pauline.
Hi, Pauline. All right.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Any advice on speaking to foreigners? For example, I've got a call with the States tomorrow and India on Wednesday. And there's always a bit of a lag, A, because of language. I know we're supposed to speak the same as the Americans, but it's not true. And B, just sometimes the intonation, you're trying to understand what's behind the sentence or the word, and everything just seems to slow down almost to the point you think, are they still there, you know?
And I'm with you. Well, let me share a couple of things with you and see if this helps. I mean, you're talking to someone, and I know I'm not the only person on the call, but probably half of what I do is international calls. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because you've kind of got this time delay as well. And certainly Americans don't speak the same English that we do, nor do Indians. It's not a problem. We don't speak the same English that they do. So it's not who's right or wrong, potato, potato. I think what you have to do, I share what what I do. It's a variation of what I've just spoken about. Like we do a lot of business in Los Angeles on the West Coast. So you've got the time delay, but I also always make a point. I'm probably doing 4 or 5 a month of the lead person. It's the prep for the call. So what I did, and I'll send it through to Lynn, you can have it, is a prep sheet for the call. And it's slightly different, Pauline. So what it basically says, it says something like, please be aware there's a time delay. So please, when you finish speaking, allow the call to drop for 2 seconds. So just go 1 second, 2 second. It's lots of little, they're like granular things, Pauline, but it's a fact. I mean, I'm sure we've all watched on the TV where some of the more experienced presenters, you've got this 2 seconds of silence before they engage with what the main newsroom has said. So tell people 2 seconds. Definitely you need to ask that everybody puts, I know you haven't got your camera on, which this is a training session, but do ask that people have got their cameras on. Really ask for that, Pauline, because on an international call, it's daunting to do an international call and you haven't got the head in front of you. I think the biggest problem with international calls is if you have a call where there's any other business at the end of the call, because it just performs differently than it does in England. I don't know what your experience is, but the minute you do any other business on an international call, all bets are off. You could be asked a really technical question that you've not prepped for. So what I do is on any other business, I write out a sandbox. So on any other business, these are the areas we can cover on any other business. Outside of any other business, you really need to email me in advance a topic. I don't know if that helps a little bit.
That sounds like great advice, a bit like talking to the media. If you haven't got an answer, say, talk to me later.
Yeah, it is a bit of that. Yeah. Which part of America are you calling?
Well, one of the people are in the Midwest and the other one is up near Chicago, and there's two people on the call.
Yeah, it's all about well, the great news is that that would probably be more gentler to communicate to generally than some of the other parts of the country without criticizing the states. But yeah, it's all about the prep, Pauline. You've really got to lay out the rules of engagement and what's possible and what's not. But this 2 second delay, it's a real killer. It will really help you on the call. Seriously, if everybody respects the 2 seconds delay before the next person starts talking.
Thank you very much. Very helpful.
Hey, no worries, man. How we doing, Lynn? What's the story? Because we've got 60 seconds left.
We do. I'm just going to launch the feedback poll before everybody goes. We've just lost a few people because of client problems and time and things, but I'm just going to launch it now. So if you don't mind just spending 2 seconds, just fill out the feedback for me before you leave. But otherwise, you can carry on, Bob, if you've got any more.
Certainly. Well, first of all, Suzette had to go. Please, can she have the handouts? She certainly can. And thank you for some really good tips and a great session. Well, I can handle it being called a great session, Lynn. I can live with that. Yeah, I think what we have to do in this moment, Lynn, is kind of phone people in advance for a webcam call, so you got the voice, then email them a crib sheet for how the call's going to go, and then after the call, have it as part of the discipline to ring someone to how the call performed. So I think we've got to be more granular about what we do, and definitely not rely on emails to carry the burden of what you think you've communicated. You know, try not to. Really try and back away from, let's send out an email afterwards. Whether it's gone well or not, whatever it is that you're doing, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that the feedback you're getting is accurate. And if you're able to, it is worth considering how can I get some feedback from an honest broker that, next time we're online, how can I improve this? I know it's a difficult thing to do because at the end of a phone call, you wouldn't say to somebody, Jonathan, we spoke on the telephone. Can you give me some ideas on how to improve it next time I ring you? You wouldn't do that. Or I wouldn't email Kevin, my last email to you, can you just tell me how you felt about that email? But I think with webcam meetings, we've got a lot more slack, a lot more slack where you could reach out to, say, Catherine and say, Catherine, we're really trying to get down to how our calls should work. And I just wanted your view on how that call went. Did we cover anything? How did it feel? What were the comms like? Did you get the questions you want answered? Were you happy with our contribution? And here's some feedback for you. Now, I think the thing is, for those on the call, that isn't normally what any of us would do. It certainly isn't what I would do. But I think in this era, we don't do that at our own peril. My closing remark will be this. 4 weeks ago, we ended up with the works. That's the punchline. We spoke to a German bank, and I tell you what, Lynn, I think that was the worst webcam call I've ever been on. Kevin, it was horrendous, man. I came off the call, and I thought that's just an absolute nightmare of a call. Nothing's happened that's going to change my life on that call. So, anyways, I rang up the HR officer the next day, and you know what I'm going to tell you? She goes, I was going to do a German accent then. Let me stick with my accent. She goes, it was, thank you so much for your time. That went really well. This went well. That went well. Do you know something, Lynn? If you'd have said to me, okay, Bob, what's the percentage that went well? I said about 10%. There was no feedback. There was nothing taking place. Everyone's demeanor was glacial. And it just goes to show you just cannot read that much through a camera. So do ask. Do take the courage to say, it's not the normal thing, Jonathan. However, we're just finding our feet with virtual meetings. Is it all right if I just check out a couple of things on the call so that next time we're on a call? Now, again, Lynn, that's how to create rapport. we've got to find things that are not the things that were available before to create rapport. So if, Pauline, you're ringing someone up and you're saying to them, how did that go? It's a reasonable thing to say right now. I think everyone's trying to work it out.
Can I come back to you on that,
Of course
John?
you can.
Because it frightens me a bit. For example, my call on Wednesday to India is a first-time call. It's for a guy who will have a big impact on, he's got tens of millions to spend on trucks and trailers. And I'm lucky to get past the gate, the dragons at the gate to even speak to him. And to ring him back and say, how did it go, is almost like insulting. I would think, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I can understand in a big company between different departments, yes, I would do that. But when it's somebody who's all too important to you, you know, it's almost like I'm admitting I'm unprofessional.
Yeah, you're right. It could come across like that. Let's hit the nail on the head. Do you know what? I once worked for a Pakistan-based company selling money transfer software around Pakistan and the Middle East. So that's not India, but I have got a grasp of the culture of that neck of the woods. I would be disinclined to use that tactic on this call.
Okay,
Seriously.
thank you. That's what I guessed. But it's just, every case is different and it's hard call sometimes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think it appreciate a lot of small talk, but I guess you know
No.
that. No, you don't say, how's the weather?
No, Mumbai.
Yeah, exactly. We can guess.
Okay, thank you.
All right, man. All right. So I think, Lynn, we're G to G, as we say back home. Good to go. Absolutely been a pleasure. Over to you, Lynn, to close it off.
I don't usually close it off, but there's only a few of you left. But if you're in Humber, then definitely get in touch. If you are already on the Digital Catalyst program, we can offer some one-to-one support, more webinars. There's a business diagnostic that you can go through where we can help you with if you need some help on anything digital based. We've got lots of experts working with us like Bob, and we can put you in touch with them, and you can work through, and we can hopefully make your business grow and get better. So yeah, get in touch. You can either email digitalcatalyst@winningmoves.com or just send me a message on the chat before you. So otherwise, thanks for coming, and we'll see you at the next one.
All right, look after yourself, guys. Best of luck. Real pleasure to speak to you all. Bye.